All right, so this was a very, very disappointing season. You could argue probably one of the biggest underachievements, at least in franchise history, and maybe NFL history. I mean, this season, the only other team that you could argue that underachieved like we did would be the Denver Broncos, with all that talent they have on the defensive side of the ball, which their defense balled out, but, you know, offensively, they definitely struggled. But we're in the same boat. Our defense, I wouldn't say balled out, but they were pretty solid. With a little bit of a better offense, we would have won definitely more games. We averaged, what, 18 points a game, something like that. And the defense was giving up like 21, like easily. We could have been a really dominant team. But before I get into my season review on our 2022 Buccaneers, I am Ramy B. If you are new here, make sure you click the subscribe button down below. I post weekly Buccaneer reaction videos during the season. And I know in off seasons it's been really spotty with content, but I wanted to put in this season review. And I'll put in more videos as we have different updates like new offensive coordinator, free agency, things like that. So definitely subscribe to stay tuned. If you notice me looking away, I have stats up on my screen and I will be referencing them. So we finished the season first place in the NFC South with an 8-9 record. Again, we were in a the worst division in the NFL. Had we been in a division that was average or a little bit above average, we definitely wouldn't have made the playoffs. I want to go into some team stats though in regards to offense and defense. So offensively, we had 5,894 total yards, 4,746 passing, and 1,308 rushing. Definitely the rushing was very low for us this year. So that comes out to about 346.7 yards per game on offense, and that ranks us 15th in the NFL. Passing, we were 269.8 yards per game, second in the NFL, and rushing 76.9 yards per game, which is 32nd, dead last in the NFL. I know halfway through the season we were at like 60-something yards per game, which was the worst like ever since the merger. I'm assuming now that we jumped up like another 10 yards, we're probably, you know, still in the bottom tier, but not the worst. We had 32 total touchdowns this year. It's a huge drop off from last year. 26 passing, 5 rushing, 1 defensive. And then field goals, we made 31 out of 38. I don't have the specifics in front of me, but I'm pretty sure out of those 7 missed ones, 5 or 6 were when Bowles wanted Succop to kick it from 50 plus yards. We scored a total of 313 total points, which is 18.4 points per game, which is 25th in the NFL. Last year, I want to say we were second at 30 point something, the largest drop off in NFL history from year to year. 13 points, so 2 touchdowns below. We also gave up 22 sacks, which ranks us first in the NFL, as in least amount of sacks. And then our turnover ratio was -2. We had 17 total fumbles with 12 lost and 10 picks. Offensively, again, we did not live up to our standards. We were way below what we were expecting, especially with the talent that we have. But I'll get into specific players and things in a bit. I want to go into defensive stats now. So we gave up 5,513 total yards, which is 3,461 passing and 2,052 rushing. I want to say this was the worst rushing defense we've had in the entire Todd Bowles era, so since 2019. If I remember correctly, I think 2019 was our best rush defense. 2020 was just as good, a little bit below. 2021 it fell off a little bit, and then this year it completely fell off. We gave up 324.3 yards per game, which makes us 9th best defensively in the NFL. We gave up 203.6 yards per game passing, which was 9th best, and then rushing 120.7, which was 15th best. We gave up a total of 41 touchdowns, 12 rushing and 29 passing. We gave up 21.1 points per game, which ranked us 13th in the NFL. We also had the 7th most sacks in the NFL, with 45, which I want to say that is our highest under Bowles. I saw a stat, I don't remember, I think in 2020 we had like 41, 42. Last year we had like 43, this year 45. And all 3 of those I think rank in the top 5 of our franchise history. So I know it seemed like our pass rush was non-existent this year, and you could argue that it was. The D-line is not getting as many sacks. We have to rely on a lot of corners, safeties, and linebacker blitzes, but we ended up with 45 total. Now, Philly was first place with 70, which was 2 behind the all-time mark, which was the Bears had 72 in like the 80s. We also forced 25 turnovers with 10 recovered. Sorry, we forced 25 fumbles. 10 of them were recovered, and we had 10 picks as well. So 20 total turnovers we got. We gave up 22 turnovers, so a -2 ratio. But let me get into the player stats. So Tom Brady had arguably one of his worst years, up there with 2019 in New England. 490 of 733 attempts, both records. He has the most completions ever and the most attempts. 66.8 completion percentage, 4,694 total yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 picks. There was a point of the season, about halfway through the season, where he only had 1 pick, and he was 3 attempts away from breaking Aaron Rodgers' record for most attempts without a pick. And then he had a flurry of like 3-4 games where he threw like 7 picks during that time. Brady definitely played off. And now it came out that, because of the divorce, he lost 15 pounds. And obviously he's going through personal things, and that's going to impact anybody. And I give him credit for not, taking time away from the team and really trying and putting in. But again, our offense and our system did not create an environment for him to succeed. On the receiving end, our number one receiver, I'm going to kind of go in order. Mike Evans, 77 receptions, 1,124 yards, which was 14.6 yards per carry, which is one of his lowest in his career, and 6 touchdowns. Wasn't his lowest in touchdowns, but it was down there. This, you could argue, is one of Mike Evans' worst years. I want to say second or third worst. I don't have all his stats in front of us, but definitely a down year for him. He started off the season getting some yards, and it looked like, I think he was in the top 7 or 8 at some, like within the first half of the season. Then it kind of fell off a bit, but he ended up getting his 1,000 yards. He extended his streak to 9 consecutive seasons now, which is the all-time record for starting a career, and he's only 2 or 3 seasons behind the all-time, which was Jerry Rice. I want to say he has 11 or 12. Chris Godwin had one of his receiving wide, considering his injuries he had. He came back from his blown knee for 104 receptions, 1,023 yards, and 3 touchdowns. This was his lowest yards per catch at 9.8 yards per catch. His highest was his rookie year, but he played very, very part-time duty, so it was like 15 yards per catch. So I don't really consider it because I think he only played 6 games that entire year or something like that. Our big free agency signing, Russell Gage, definitely disappointed. I know he was dealing with injuries and stuff, but 51 receptions, 426 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He had the second most receiving touchdowns on the team. Julio Jones, 24 receptions, 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. So our receiving core overall definitely had a drop-off. The entire offense did. We weren't scoring as many points, but definitely there was a big drop-off in terms of offensive performance this year. The receivers, with the scheme not getting open, having to go through, contested catches, things like that. Tight end, I only looked at Cade Otton's stats just because he is our tight end of the future for now. 42 receptions, 391 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Those 2 touchdowns being the game winner against the Rams and the second to last touchdown against the Saints that sparked our comeback at home. The running game, definitely a big disappointment. Leonard Fournette, 189 carries for 668 yards, which is 3.5 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. He definitely, I know he said he played with an injury through the whole year, but arguably his worst year of his career. Rachaad White came in and played a little bit better, 129 rushes for 481 yards at 3.7 yards per carry and 1 touchdown. Again, it's hard to assess whether our running backs have really fallen off or not, but it seems more the offensive scheme and the forced running. I know the Pewter Report had a podcast where they talked about some of the issues and Byron Leftwich kind of doing first down runs to check off a box for balls that he is running, and the lack of imagination in the running game, the tendency to run to the left side of the line, which had more injuries. Donovan Smith is not our best lineman. Our left guard shuffled in and out, Godeke, Leverett, all of those things. Meanwhile, the right side, you had Shaq Mason and Tristan Wirfs, which is our stronger side, and not really running to that side as often or at all, really, if you think about it. The lack of play action, there was a lot of issues, and obviously Byron Leftwich has been fired, and I'll get into kind of the offensive coordinator near the end of the video. I want to get into the defense. Carlton Davis, he played 13 games. I know he had some injuries. He had 1 pick, 12 passes defensed, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, and 65 total tackles. Again, he pretty much locks up one side of the field. Against Jamar Chase, I think when they were one-on-one, he held him to like 30 yards or something like that. The only knock on Carlton Davis's game is his lack of interceptions. There's so many games where the ball hits him right in his hands. I was at the Arizona Cardinals game, and I want to say it was their first or second drive. He overthrew the receiver, their quarterback did, and it literally hit Carlton Davis in the hands, and he dropped it. That's literally his biggest knock. If he can catch 30% of the picks that he gets his hands on, he would have 5 or 6 picks probably and be regarded as a top 3 corner in the NFL, but he doesn't. Jamel Dean, which you could argue this year was our most consistent corner, at least in the beginning half of the year. He had played 15 games. He had 2 picks, 8 passes defensed, and 57 tackles. I think this ties his most picks in a year. I want to say last year he had 2 as well. Maybe his rookie year he had 3. I don't remember, but again, he was arguably our most consistent corner, and the fact that he was barely playing against the Cowboys and only played on special teams. I know Bowles said he was sick and ill, but he still played special teams, so he was able to play. Sean Murphy-Bunting played 12 games, had 2 picks, 7 passes defensed, 1 forced fumble, and 31 tackles. Again, it's hard to say our defense didn't play well because they held the opponents to 21.1 points per game, and then also you think about how our offense had so many 3 and outs. It put the defense in a really bad situation. It reminds me kind of 2019 with all the picks Jameis had. The defense played really well, but the fact that they kept having short fields and they were on the field a lot kind of hurt the numbers. Same thing this year. There was a lot of 3 and outs. The other team would drive a little bit, punt, we'd get it 3 and out, the defense is back on. They would get gas at the end of games, so it's hard to really assess whether these players were not playing to their best or just the circumstance that they were in. Going into our safeties, Mike Edwards played in 13 games. He had 2 picks, one of them being a pick 6 week 2 against the Saints. He had 3 passes defense, that's 1 sack and 82 tackles. Logan Ryan, who's our big defensive pickup, he obviously was hurt for a lot of the year, but he played 9 games, had 1 pick, 3 passes defense, the forced fumble, fumble recovery, and 37 tackles. Antoine Winfield again, a lot of injuries. He played 13 games, 1 pick, 3 passes defense, the forced fumble. He had 4 sacks and 80 total tackles. And Keanu Neal played all 17 games in part-time duty, 1 pick, 4 passes defense, and half a sack. He definitely was a good pickup. I want to say he did contribute when we needed. But overall, I'd say our safeties played pretty well considering that there was a lot of injuries, and I definitely wouldn't say they were the weakness of our team, our defense at least. I would argue that our weakness was definitely our front 7, the D-line with the injuries, with Shaq Barrett being gone and all of that. But going into our linebackers, Lavonte David had 5 passes defense, 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, 3 sacks, 124 tackles, and 10 tackles for loss. Consistent again in terms of reliability. You would like to see him get a lot of picks, but I want to say in his career he hasn't really gotten too many picks. So it's kind of up there. I wouldn't say it's his best season, but it's definitely among his average. Devin White had 5 passes defense, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 5.5 sacks, 124 tackles, and 8 tackles for loss. Him and Lavonte had the same number of tackles. He had 2 less tackles for losses, but definitely when it comes to turnovers, Lavonte David and Devin White are really good at creating fumbles and recovering them. I want to say Lavonte David leads our team history. I think he passed Derek Brooks with the most forced fumbles and recoveries, so can't really complain about the linebackers in regards to that. You could definitely complain about them in terms of pass coverage this year, especially Devin White. Now, Devin White is entering a prove-it year. It's his 5th-year option next year, so we'll see if they're going to keep him or not. But if he can play 70% of what he did in the 2020 playoffs, we're definitely going to keep him. Now I want to go to the D-line, which is definitely our weakness. Shaq Barrett played only in 8 games. He had 1 forced fumble, 3 sacks, 6 QB hits, 31 tackles, 6 tackles for loss. He got hurt in that Ravens game on Thursday night, and if I remember correctly, he was causing havoc that day. He was hitting Lamar, he was all in the backfield. It seemed like he was getting hot, and you would have loved to see how it would have played out had he not gotten hurt. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, which I believe has been a disappointment thus far in his career. I know last year was a rookie year. It's hard for rookies sometimes, but he hasn't really improved. 4 sacks. I want to say he had 4 last year, so no improvement there. He had 14 QB hits, 40 tackles, and 6 tackles for losses. He would be better coming off the bench and being kind of a part-time player rather than a full-time player. Carl Nassib, he played 13 games this year. I don't remember if he was hurt or we picked him up later in the year, but he had 1 forced fumble, 3.5 sacks, 6 QB hits, 23 tackles, 6 tackles for losses. When he was playing here before, he balled out as well. I just want to say that he probably is a good kind of rotational player, definitely solid. Anthony Nelson, 3 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery, 5.5 sacks, 6 QB hits, 46 tackles, and 4 tackles for losses. Definitely a good pickup and good guy coming off the bench in rotation. And I think he played a lot because of the Shaq Barrett injury, and he's definitely a good player to keep on the roster. He's not going to be too expensive, but he's going to give you solid, consistent play. Vita Vea, arguably our best D lineman this year, had 1 forced fumble, 1 fumble recovery, led our team in sacks with 6.5, 13 QB hits, 31 tackles, and 7 tackles for losses. Not much you can say about him. He's always pretty consistent. Now, he did have some games where he wasn't disrupting the backfield, and that was when Akeem Hicks was out, so teams really could focus on getting him out of the game. Akeem Hicks played in 11 games, and I remember this stat when him and Vita Vea played together, we were like 8-1, or I don't know, something like that, 6-1. And when they both weren't playing, we were getting shredded in the run game and not winning. But Akeem Hicks definitely underperformed this year. In 11 games, he had 1 sack, 4 QB hits, 22 tackles, and 2 tackles for loss. And then Raheem Nunez-Roches, who I'm a big fan of, Nacho, 2 sacks, 3 quarterback hits, 33 tackles, and 5 tackles for losses. I like him because our Super Bowl year in 2020, he definitely filled in when Vita Vea was out, and our defense didn't really miss a step with Sue and him. I think he's a solid player, and he definitely can get it done, and I hope that we continue to keep him on the roster. So yeah, I mean, overall, you can see the team underperformed, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Again, Byron Leftwich was definitely the biggest contributor in terms of the lack of creativity. I know I've said it multiple times through the season that they kept saying Bruce Arians had his red pen, and it looked like, yeah, he needed that red pen because that red pen is what helped us win games and having a more explosive offense. There's a lot of reports saying Todd Bowles wanted to run more, and Byron Leftwich wasn't implementing the things that the head coach wanted, and there was kind of this clash behind the scenes, and offensive players were being frustrated. A lot of different things that were kind of contributing, but ultimately it led to Byron Leftwich getting fired. And I know when he got fired, I wondered, Bruce Arians is all about loyalty, and these were all kind of his guys. How would the relationship between Bruce and Todd Bowles be? And now a report came out that Bruce Arians is pissed off and he may not be around the team as much next year. And I know all year, every time Bruce Arians spoke, he made excuses for Byron. He kept kind of blaming Brady and really defending Byron. And I don't think he personally believed it. I think he really wanted Byron to be a head coaching candidate. And honestly, the worst thing for Byron was turning down that Jacksonville Jags job. It was good for Jacksonville. They got Peterson and went to the playoffs and definitely had a huge turnaround. But I don't think Byron Leftwich gets another job or an opportunity to be a head coach. Maybe offensive coordinator, but his offense is very Bruce's offense overall is kind of outdated and really relies on a lot of talent. And everything I kept reading and seeing is that 2020 and 2021 we had a lot of talent, and that our talent is going to beat you if we go head on, regardless of scheme. You can't guard Gronk, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. If you can maybe take out three, if you can, the fourth one's always available. And now that we lost some of that talent with Gronk and AB, you really see how things are difficult for the offense. Now, I think Todd Bowles should have been fired. Again, he cost us potentially a second Super Bowl last year, because again, I still believe had he not run that all-out blitz and we went into overtime with the Rams, there's a strong chance we could win that game. We had the momentum, all of those things. He cost us with that play call, sure, aggressive, but we just got back into the game and tied it. Why do that? I've never seen someone get rewarded. He cost us a Super Bowl. We would have hosted the San Francisco 49ers, and I 1000% believe we would have beat them and then beaten the Bengals. So he cost us that, and then he comes in, gives us an 8-9 record. Arguably Tom Brady's, no, not arguably, it was his most losses in a season, a first losing season, and all of that. I think Bowles should have been gone. He definitely, ruined our second Super Bowl, like I said, and our chance to potentially be a solid team this year. But Todd Bowles, to save himself, had to fire Byron Leftwich, and I get it. He didn't get to hire his own staff. It was late in the process, and now he does. So we'll see. I don't think things are going to change at all. I see a lot of Jets fans saying the issues we have is issues they had when they had him. I think it would be more beneficial for Todd Bowles to give up defensive play calling to one of his defensive assistants, and he can, focus on really being a head coach and focusing on the team as a whole. He's very bad with time management in terms of the game clock management, bad with the timeouts like the Cleveland Browns thing, his decisions to kick field goals 53, 54 yards, even though our kicker cannot really kick anything beyond 50 yards. It's very mismanagement at the top. But he's saving himself one more year. It's going to be hard to hire an offensive coordinator because Todd Bowles is potentially a lame duck. Now, an offensive coordinator who knows he can perform well offensively should know that if Bowles is out, he might get promoted. So I know we hired essentially most of, if not all of the offensive staff. A couple people retired so they can get paid, like Clyde Christensen. He retired so he can kind of keep his salary and things like that. I don't have all the names in front of me, but I do want to go into the current offensive coordinators that are tied to us for interviews. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know too much about a lot of them, but there's one that I really am a fan of and have in mind. So the first one is Jim Bob Cooter, Jacksonville's pass game coordinator. It's hard to tell whether it's really him. It's Doug Peterson's offense, and I think Doug Peterson calls plays. I know Jim Bob Cooter was, if I remember, the offensive coordinator for the Lions for 4 or 5 years when Matthew Stafford had those pretty good years. Again, I don't know too much about him. I don't know if he'd be a good fit. Keenan McCardell's a good name just because he has won a Super Bowl with us. He was the Vikings wide receiver coach for a while, and I know a lot of Vikings fans don't want him to leave. I know he's very respected there. Again, I know, sometimes people like getting new names, and I think he might be well. I mean, I can't really say if he's, what his offense would look like or what things would be, what his philosophy would be or anything like that. Now, if he wows in the interview, perfect. We'll have somebody that's familiar with Tampa and obviously, has cherished memories with us, and I think if he wows them, he could be a good coordinator, but it's really hard to base it off of. Clint Kubiak is very interesting. He's the Broncos pass game coordinator and QB coach. I know the Broncos had a bad year, but after they fired their head coach, Nathaniel Hackett, Clint Kubiak kind of took over, and I know they started scoring more points and moving the ball a little bit better. And I think they won a couple games as well. And his father obviously is very well known. I think he'd be an interesting decision. Out of the three so far, I'm more of a fan of Kubiak. And then the Giants QB coach, Shea Tierney, he is... you saw what the Giants did, their head coach with Dayball, what he did with what's his name, Josh Allen, how Josh Allen, since Dayball left, Josh Allen led the league in turnovers, and Daniel Jones went from leading the league to being one of the better ones. I think Shea Turney would be a definitely interesting one at all as well. But the one I'm a big fan of is Todd Monken. He is currently University of Georgia's offensive coordinator and led them to 2 back-to-back national titles with Stenson, I don't know his name, the quarterback that they have, who now seems like a legitimate maybe 3rd round QB, 4th round in the draft, Stenson Bennett. But I do want to talk about him because he was our offensive coordinator in 2018. I know he was with our staff with Dirk Cutter. Again, I think that he would be a very good coordinator. He's proven it in college. He was the Browns offensive coordinator in 2019. I know he wanted to stay when Bruce came, but Bruce brought his own staff. 2019, it was Baker Mayfield's 2nd year, and Baker had 22 touchdowns, 21 picks. It was a bad year for Baker, but the Browns are a very dysfunctional franchise. I do want to say though, in 2018 in Tampa, it's hard to tell how much is him or not, because Dirk Cutter during that time kept flip-flopping who would call plays and who wouldn't, but that was the year that we blew up in the first 3-4 games. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns against the Saints. We dropped 48, 3 or 4 touchdowns against the Eagles in week 2. We won 27 points there. Another explosion against the Steelers. So there's signs there. I even remember that year against Washington, Dirk Cutter was calling plays, and we put up over 500 yards of offense and only had 3 points. And it seemed like when Monken was in, was able to produce more. I just want to go into stats. That year, Fitzpatrick played in 8 games, had 2,366 yards, 17 touchdowns, 12 picks, with a 66.7% completion rate. Jameis in 11 games had 65% completion, 2,992 yards, 19 touchdowns, 14 picks. Nothing to be, proud about, but again, with Dirk Cutter's offense and things like that, it was Dirk Cutter's offense and he was calling plays in some games. I don't know which one specifically again, but I do want to say it was Mike Evans' best year. He had 86 receptions for 1,524 yards, 17.7 yards per carry, and 8 touchdowns. You could argue that last year, 2021 and 2020, were Evans' best years in terms of touchdowns and points, but his yards were definitely down. This was Evans' better year in terms of that. And if we have a better quarterback that year, I think Evans would have had more touchdowns. Chris Godwin, 59 receptions that year, 842 yards and 7 touchdowns. It was Godwin's 2nd year. He didn't play in every game. Again, part-time role. We had Deshaun Jackson, so Godwin wasn't getting on the field as much. But again, 59 receptions for 842 yards. It was one of Godwin's higher. It was Godwin's higher yards per catch, and the 7 touchdowns I think leads was the best in Godwin's career. But I know this video is long, and I wanted to cover a lot of things. I think we underachieved this year. We definitely had potential to make a run in the playoffs, but we didn't. But it seems like the future is 50-50 right now. We could get a good offensive coordinator that could lure Brady back, or Brady will be involved in the process. I don't think Kyle Trask is the answer. I don't think Blaine Gabbert is the answer. I don't think we can draft anybody either unless someone falls. But I think in terms of if we have a good offensive scheme, regardless of who's quarterback, and it shows flashes, it'll help us the year after if we fire, Todd Bowles and then the offensive coordinator gets promoted. But again, I'm a big fan of Todd Monken. I think he should be the one as of who is named right now. I don't know if any other names will pop up, but Todd Monken, I know, is a big fan of Tampa and cherishes the area. And, a lot of people love our owners. You don't really hear too many people complaining about them. But yeah, sorry for the long video, Bucs Nation. Tell me what you think down below about the season, offensive coordinator, all of those things. But yeah, in honor of trying not to make it even longer, thank you for tuning in. Let's go Bucs. Hopefully next year is a much better year, and hopefully we can get it turned around. Hopefully Brady does come back if we don't have any other option, but we'll see. Today they said Miami's not interested in Brady. They're going to keep Tua. 49ers lost, so maybe, Brady might be linked there. Who knows? There's still a lot of question marks, so we don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Let's go Bucs, and as always, I am out.
Let's go! You a Buccaneer fan, let me know.